5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're recording. Hey, this is Paul Sponcia, the CEO of the IT company. As many videos as I've done, I guess everybody knows that, and I don't need to keep telling people who I am. But I'm here with my friend Karen Clark, who has a really cool background and career. And I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about what she has done and what she is doing now, and then we'll talk about why we're together.
Thanks, Paul. Hi, everyone. My name is Karen Clark. I'm the director of Somerset's Technology Advisory Services. My background is really largely in large healthcare operations, where I was a CIO for over 20 years. And I thought by talking to Paul this morning, we might be able to give some folks some tips now that they have had to move some of their workforce home.
Yeah, great. And I appreciate you doing it, Karen. You have always been always just so kind to do stuff with us, and we've actually never done business together. but
we're friends. It's great.
I know, but we've been friends and have been able to, I think, help the technology community in some of the things that we've done. So I always appreciate that. So we're in a little bit of a, as everybody knows, a crazy time. People have gone home and worked from home, been made to work from home, and that has changed things in a lot of ways, organizationally and the way people communicate. But maybe the topic of cybersecurity has kind of been touched on, but it's sort of been left out, except for maybe in the technology circles. So I'd love to know from your perspective, Karen, what do you think this means from a cybersecurity perspective of everybody all of a sudden, as you are and as I am, even though this is not my house that you see behind me, are working from home?
Well, I think probably the biggest thing is, as employers we've had to quickly move the workforce home, is it's expanded the attack surface dramatically. I mean, we used to be behind our safe company firewall. We could monitor typically 1 or 2 public-facing IPs, so it's highly controlled. And now that attack surface has moved out into every single employee's home.
Yeah.
I think the other thing to notice is we've all seen notices from the FTC, the FBI, all the 3-letter agencies about all the deliberate COVID-19 related attacks that are out there. I mean, the hackers are absolutely trying to exploit this vulnerability. I mean, last month alone, there were over 2,000 COVID-19 related domains registered just last month.
Wow.
And I think the important thing for people to really understand is expert hackers don't hack systems, they hack people.
Yeah.
And a business email compromise is the #1 way that you're going to get hacked. So I think that's the important thing to notice is we've just spread out that attack surface. I made myself some notes here. I said, yeah, and I think it's important for people to realize that employees have always been targets of these people.
Mm-hmm.
It's just now they're so much more exposed than they were when we could protect them somewhat behind our firewall.
Right. That's right. Yeah, that's good. I mean, I think that it is I think people generally probably assume, well, I go home and I just work and I have all these tools and everything works the same way it is, or the leaders of that organization, especially I think in this time where it was like there wasn't a lot of thought into it. It was just we have to go home. We just have to. Everybody's got to go home, and we got to work. And so this has sort of been an afterthought. So
yeah.
So what do you think a business should look at? I mean, I think a lot of people are going to be now reevaluating remote workforces. People that never had them before probably have had their eyes opened and are thinking, oh, well, now maybe this actually works a little bit in our favor. Maybe this is helpful. So where do you think businesses should start when they start to consider having people begin to be a remote workforce?
Yeah, well, I've got my notes here from where we've been advising some of our clients. I think they fall, just as you said, into 2 categories. People who already had a remote workforce and simply had to scale up, more licenses, more RAM. Then there are a lot of businesses that did not have a remote workforce, except for maybe 1 or 2 employees. And so they really had to install a lot of technology quickly.
Yeah.
So I think, my checklist of things comes down to #1, how are people connecting to your company network? Are you requiring a VPN? If you're not, stop there, because that's a #1 thing to do. If they are connecting via VPN, are you using some sort of 2-factor or multi-factor authentication? We all know the text message that comes to our phone. There are a lot of tools you can use to do that. But that's the next thing in your layer of security. The next thing to look at is, once I am connected to my company network, what can I access? Do I have full access to all files, folders, shares, just as if I was in the office? Or are you limiting me to a virtual desktop, a specific application? Are you controlling what I get to? The next thing we've got on our list, am I using a company-owned and managed laptop, or am I using a personal device?
Big deal.
Right. I mean, people love the idea of BYOD, bring your own device, but I always think of it as bring your own risk. I mean, personal devices are just nightmares from a security standpoint. Is your patching and antivirus up to date? It's mundane, it's not sexy, but gosh, it's really, really important. And then the last thing I would look at, it's more techie, but whether or not you have split tunneling enabled. Because if you have enabled split tunneling on your VPN, that exposes your private VPN to the public unprotected network. So that's the checklist we go down to see, how do people connect? If they do connect, what do they have access to, and how are they exposing your company network?
I want to add a little bit to that. So just to talk about one thing, I think for a lot of people that'll be listening won't be very technical. So one important thing about the whole idea of VPN combined with a personal device is that if it's your personal computer that your kids, your wife, your husband, whoever accesses, it's not protected, controlled, and set up, then connecting it to the corporate network via a VPN is actually quite dangerous, because that device has no security controls in place. And then if you add split tunneling, which split tunneling basically means I can get to while I'm connected, I can go to the public internet off of my computer as well as my private, network. If that's enabled, to Karen's point, you're kind of tripling the risk around all those things, because you're connected to the public internet, which makes you susceptible. You're connected to the private network, which is now you have the public internet has, public internet isn't been given access, but your computer has access to the private network, and then you're on some computer that's not protected. So just really, really important to drive that point home. And something else.
One of the worst virus attacks we had, my old place, was a fellow brought in his personal laptop, and his 9-year-old daughter had put on the Sparkle Barbie Bedazzler screensaver something, and that thing was it was a nightmare. The things that can even appear very, very innocent and inconsequential can have a lot of malware hidden within them.
And we're telling people too, you need to really start I don't know if you guys are talking about this, but antivirus is one thing, but there's another technology called EDR or MDR, which has to do with it's more AI, machine learning, and behavioral based. So it's not typical antivirus. For those listening, is there's a known virus. Somebody writes what's called a signature to deal with that virus, and so it's not a 0-day. It's something that has to be known. Versus a lot of attacks, to Karen's point, are what are called 0-day attacks, meaning nobody knows about them. And so you need something on your machine that actually addresses behavioral, meaning this doesn't look like it's operating the way it used to operate, or this is doing something that I don't think it should do. So I think that's a very important thing for people, especially in a BYOD setting, where if you're going to do BYOD, which we're not big fans of it either, but if you're going to do that, then you need to really amp it up for sure. So are there, I think one of the challenges, you sat in on a lunch and learn that we did with a cyber warfare expert, and you and I joked that, which I said this to him, and he goes, well, don't think that the federal government has unlimited funds, because there's a lot of stuff that we should be doing that that they may not be doing. I mean, there's budgets, but I think we all assume that, and I'm sure that from a federal government perspective, the military is super, super strong, has spent a lot of money to protect themselves. We don't have that bandwidth, capacity, capability. So what are maybe some inexpensive ways that businesses could just sort of take the first step in beefing up the security for at-home workers?
Yeah, I mean, this is a question we get a lot, because people understand the risk, but as to your point, they don't have unlimited funds to do it. So, I mean, I've got a list here of some things. I would say the number one thing you can do is enable two-factor authentication. There are still many, many companies here who today that don't have that turned on. There are lots of either free or very low cost apps. I mean, I happen to use Duo. It ranges from $3 to $6 per user per month. Google Authenticator's free. LastPass has a free version.
Yeah.
Authy is, I think, $4 a month. So they're very inexpensive. They're easy to implement, and it increases your security by a factor of 10, if not more.
Yeah.
The other thing I would look at is if you have any applications, typically most email platforms support two-factor authentication. If you're using Office 365 or G Suite or whatever email platform you're using, if that's not turned on, turn it on and require it.
Yeah.
If you have any other applications that support two-factor authentication, especially if your company is using some cloud-based apps and you've thought, well, it's a hassle, it's an extra step. It is an extra step, but it absolutely increases your security at zero cost or very low cost.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say is if you have a virtual desktop environment at your office, many people can connect in, but they are directed to a desktop instance on a server that really controls what they can get to and what they can do.
Yep.
That really is the best thing you can do, because even then, if I'm sitting at home with my personal laptop with the Barbie Bedazzler screensaver, the only thing I can get to is a virtual desktop on your system where you have complete control of what I can get access to.
Yeah.
So if you have that in place already, be sure to leverage it for your remote workforce.
Yeah. Little third-party story. Just yesterday, I got an email from a customer, and I was like, it doesn't. I don't know why they would why that person would send me an email, and B, it looks fishy about it. And I investigated it, and they had been compromised. And I asked our team, I was like, hey, do they not have, multi-factor authentication turned on? They're like, nope. And I said, is there a reason why? They're like, they declined it. They thought it was too much of a hassle. Mm-hmm. And we say a lot, like, security is super inconvenient. We use HubSpot for our CRM, and I went into HubSpot this morning on my computer, and it was that time when it needed me to re-authenticate and go through the the two-factor, and I'm like, I gotta go pull my phone out and look it up. But I'm like, it's inconvenient, but you know what? The chances of somebody compromising that are a lot lower because of it.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you think that's inconvenient, just think how inconvenient it is when one of your employees transfers $40,000 out of your bank account because they got hacked with a business email compromise. And I think people to understand is these guys, when I said they hack people, it's very easy to grab the IT company's logo.
Yeah.
It's very easy to find out who Paul Sponcia is. It's very easy to find out about this thing, which I guess is going to end up on Facebook.
Yeah.
So, that's the kind of hacking we're talking about. Is I get an email from Paul with the IT company's logo saying, hey, Karen, really enjoyed the Facebook interview today. Yeah. Can you just give us a little more information so we can push this out to our audience? It looks legit. It's based on a legit thing that really happened. And these guys are really clever at leveraging that kind of thing. Yeah. Your employees are busy. They're working at home. They're distracted. The dog is barking. The kids need lunch. They're just trying to get things done. And they tend to skim email and just click to move through it. And that's the sweet spot for these guys where they get you. Yeah.
You said something in a lunch and learn that you and I did maybe in the year or two ago now that I thought was really, really eye-opening about this had to do with healthcare, but like the costs associated with a breach. And it really drove the point home. Like you said, hey, we have this many records, this many people. So just in postage to notify all those people. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do. And we were talking about the costs when you're, as a business owner, if you're evaluating the cost for some of these, all the different security products and services you can buy, and there are a lot of them, and it can cost a lot of money. But in healthcare, for example, I was with an organization that had under 1 million records in our database, and one of our board members asked, gee, do we really need to spend this, I think it was $40,000 or $50,000 on this, whatever we were buying, why should we spend that much money? And I explained, I said, well, under the OCR guidelines, if our patient database is breached, we have to notify our patients by postal mail. Mm-hmm. And we had at that time 866,850 something records. in our database. I said, that's $440,000 in postage before you even get started with the problem. And
That's
so
crazy.
I think that's the thing. You've got to put that in balance. And maybe 8 or 10 years ago, the prospect of being hacked or compromised felt to people as though that happened to other people, but not to us. But I doubt there's anybody listening today that hasn't either had it happen to them or had it happen to a close friend or a business associate. So it's no longer a small percentage of people this happens to.
Yeah, I've gotten the email that said, the hacker email that says that says what my password is, and not my current password, but a past password, because I've used a password at who's the big credit bureau that got hacked?
Equifax.
Equifax. So hey, all bets are off. If you use Equifax, like whatever password you use has been compromised, so it doesn't take much. So that being said, how do we continue to raise employees' awareness? Because the saying is true that our best firewall is our employee. The end user is the best firewall. So what do we do to keep their awareness at the highest level?
Well, it's a very difficult thing, because all of us are being bombarded all day long with notices about hacks, or this is dangerous, or look out for this. And honestly, at some point, I think it becomes noise.
Yeah.
And people just say, yeah, I know. So I found the most effective way to talk to your employees is, if you have had a personal experience in your organization where your accounting department almost wire transferred $10,000 that they shouldn't have, or someone's email was hacked and there was an attempt against their bank account or business associate, if you can any way make it personal to your employees, your company, the people you do business with, that is going to get people's attention in a much more way than a generalized warning.
Yeah.
There's also some great resources. There's a security company called KnowBe4, and it's spelled KNOWBE numeral 4. And they do a paid for security awareness and pen testing, that kind of stuff. But one of the things they've put out during this crisis is a free home security session. People can go to their website and sign up for the free one. It costs nothing. And it's very good, and it gives specific examples of, this is what a hacked email looks like. This is the kind of language they use. They'll very often use a sense of urgency. Your password is going to expire this Friday. Change it now. There are a lot of hacks coming out now via text message, as well as email, related to the $1,200 payment from the government that everybody's looking for.
Yep.
Log in here to make sure you get your $1,200 payment. And so the KnowBe4 site is good because it gives some specific examples. But I think if you were to tell your employees, read the FBI notices, put them out there and say, guys, right now there's a high incidence of hacks and tricks, scams related to the $1,200 payment. If you see anything like that, don't answer it. If you get a text, if you get a web link in a text message, don't click on it. Just give them some specific tools rather than generalized be careful message, which I don't know how much that really does for anybody's awareness.
Yeah, the tools like KnowBe4, we deploy that for customers, and it's powerful. It's a powerful product that does everything, testing and notifications, and it's really, really good. So that's good.
Yeah, it is good.
So what do you think, kind of wrapping up, the Tennessee, the order was extended to the end of April. Who knows what's going to happen? I think even my assessment is it's going to be really, I think, fascinating to watch as people kind of figure out, well, I mean, do we all go back to the office, or do a third of us go to the office? What do we do? So when we finally get back to whatever normal is, whatever that means for us,
right.
What do you think is going to happen? What do you think happens? What do you think is going to be, what it's going to look like?
Well, I think all the toothpaste isn't going to go back in the tube.
Yeah.
I think there are some employers now saying, maybe I could deploy a partially remote workforce. Or, now maybe that means locating some people in less expensive real estate, or it means home, or it means from home some days a week, or it means from home maybe you're recovering from a knee surgery or maternity leave. So I think now that we've had to all make it work in a hurry, people see that it does work. So I would say if you are an employer who's looking at allowing people to work from home on an ongoing basis, there are a couple things that I would really recommend. I've sort of written down a list here that we're recommending to people, is that if you're going to allow employees to work from home, it's a really good investment to buy them a company laptop that you own, you control, you manage, and you can make sure that you know what goes on in that laptop, and instruct them that this is not the family laptop. This is the work laptop. I'd say that's the number one. Turn off split tunneling, which we talked about before. But I would really consider investing in or looking at a virtual desktop setup. Virtual desktops, employee connects from home, they connect to a virtual desktop. You have complete control not only of what they can or can't do, but all of your company data stays on your company network. The only thing that's passing over that internet connection are screen drawing instructions, keystrokes, but the data never leaves your network. So I would say that would be a number one thing to do. I would say to be sure that if it is your course company managed laptop, enable Windows Sync. And what Windows Sync is, it allows you to synchronize local folders with a company server. So if your employee is creating documents or spreadsheets or any company-related data on their personal laptop, Windows Sync will make sure that a copy of that goes back to the company server so you don't lose control of your company information and data. And then the other thing I would do is set a policy of having folks log into the VPN at night and stay logged in. This will allow things like Windows Sync to run, but then you instruct your IT team at night over the VPN when traffic is low, push out patches, updates, virus signatures, anything you need to patch to maintain and keep that laptop as secure and controlled as possible. A lot of patches require reboot to be enabled, so you have their folks push out patches and updates, institute an automatic reboot. By the time your user comes in the next morning and logs in, he or she has got a laptop that's completely up to date, fully synced back to the network. Disk encryption goes without saying, of course. I hope it does. But if you do this, if the person's laptop is stolen out of their car, or their child pours the cup of coffee on it, or whatever happens to it, you've just lost the laptop. You haven't lost any of your company information or any of your security. So those are things I would do if I was considering letting people work from home on a longer term basis.
Yeah, that's good. One of our challenges is people leaving their laptops on. So, trying to get it updated when it's not on is an ongoing challenge that we have processes in place to address it, but it's still one of those things that's like kind of, you show somebody a report like, well, they haven't left their laptop on at night in 3 weeks, so we haven't been able to patch it.
I think that comes back to policies and procedures. So you say to your employee, all right, Paul, we're going to allow you to work from home, but allowing you for work from home, we've got some requirements surrounding that, which is no personal use of the company laptop. I mean, if you want to go to Amazon and buy something, we don't care, but, not letting your kids use it, agreeing to leave it on at night, all these kinds of things. Because being able to work from home for many people will be considered a privilege or a boon. And so I think you just tie your policies to that. Make it a requirement.
Good. Always great to spend time with you, Karen, and you always have great insight. And you are I feel like now we are the veterans and we're no longer the youngsters in IT. And so,
that's okay by me.
I know, a very, very different place to be, but I appreciate you and appreciate your insight. And I'm going to just stop recording and then we can chat for a couple of minutes.
Okay, that sounds great.